everyone. We are so excited to start the second day of our Performance Summit with a very special session and a very special guest. Today's session is the power of content, and who better to help us introduce this topic than the king of content, a man that needs no introduction, Derek Blasberg, the head of fashion and beauty at YouTube. Hey, Derek.
What a great introduction, king of content. I will take it. It's great to see you, Allison. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Well, for those of you joining us, today's theme of the session is focused on the power of content, and we'll talk about the evolution of content, the current landscape of the fashion industry and the beauty industry, specifically media, and how creation ties very closely to brand identity and brand narrative. So let's just jump in, because I know you're a get to the point kind of New Yorker guy. Actually, you're not New Yorker, but I don't know how long after living in New York you just like convert to a New Yorker.
I think in City they said 10 years. So although I'm still a Midwest boy at heart, I definitely identify as a New Yorker now. But yes, let's get into it. Let's dive right in.
Okay, so thinking about, how quickly we've seen digitization and social media change. I mean, even for, boomers and older generations in the past few years with the pandemic, how have you seen content and video evolving?
You mean overall?
Yeah.
Or I think especially in the past 2 years, we've seen users become super savvy at finding what they want to see. So, of course, I work at YouTube, and I think, and obviously I have a lot of insight into what's working on YouTube, but I also obviously look at other platforms. And as a user myself, and as a person who's into exploring user habits, I can definitely assert that people are going to Instagram for Instagram content, they're going to TikTok for TikTok content, and they're coming to YouTube for super YouTube-y content. And so the biggest push that we've seen with our partners is reminding people to create platform agnostic content. And on YouTube, that's probably a little bit longer, that's a little more in depth, that's definitely more narrative. People are coming to YouTube for a larger chunk of content messaging. So, we want to see behind the scenes, tips, secrets, peel back the curtain, all that kind of juicy stuff.
I can imagine. I mean, what was it when we started doing research? I think it was before the pandemic too. It was some crazy number of the amount of hours people sit on YouTube per day. And then obviously as a boss, you're like, how many of those hours are actually during work? And now I'm sure that's like grown exponentially because you're working from home. So you don't even need to hide that you're looking at crazy cat videos on YouTube for like 3 hours during the workday.
I mean, that's why I started working here. Now I can look at crazy YouTube videos all day and say,
You get
oh,
paid for
another hard day at the office.
My 18-month-old daughter spent, I swear, like 30 minutes looking at cat videos yesterday. It was like a godsend during my conference call. So thank you, YouTube. But now she's like, I don't even know how she was pronouncing it, but it definitely didn't sound like YouTube. So we'll have to work on that word.
Thank you. Thank you for starting her young. We need more YouTube.
So in this current landscape, it's all about creating a brand image and brand identity. And that's obviously this result of how you engage your consumer. And media and owned media is a huge part of that. So, how do you guys, or how do you, as a creator yourself or someone that's been working with brands for so many years, how do you see the creation of content, which ultimately represents a brand's identity, helping to engage readers, consumers, and influence these consumers in their purchases?
To be honest, every time we meet with a fashion partner, like our conversations really boil around, would you watch this? Like when we meet with the social team or with a creative director or with a communications director or a CMO, we basically ultimately ask, honestly, if you were at home and you didn't work here, would you watch this content? And I think that is sort of the trick, is to create content that you yourself want to see, because you can't expect other people to watch it if you're not going to. So as we think about YouTube specific content, non-narrative, so like pretty videos of like girls walking down the beach or like holding a purse, like that is not super engaged, and we don't see a lot of organic responses to that. Was that your dog or my dog?
It's mine this time. I actually was thinking about it before we jumped on. Like last time, Derek's dog was barking a lot. So if mine does, like, it's no problem.
Perfect. Perfect. Yes, we both have dog passes. So when we meet with brands, we remind them that the golden rule for YouTube is content that's 4 to 10 minutes long, narrative and structure, reveals a secret or teaches a lesson. So do you want to invest in the craftsmanship journey of your bag? Do you have access to, who's the face of your brand? If you're on a photo shoot or if you have a fashion show, let's go backstage, the secrets to the look. That sort of stuff is the sort of content that we find is getting viewers, potential customers and consumers much more engaged and excited about exploring a brand and its content.
I think that's a really easy way to kind of tell your boss at home, not yours, but anyone that works in the digital marketing team. I feel like there are so many people that are running some of these huge companies and they think about fashion campaigns and they remember when they were shooting for Vogue and how there was like this beautiful, very perfect campaign that got shot and you had your behind the scenes videos, but it was still like perfectly edited. And nowadays, I think it's exactly what you're saying. The consumer is like, yeah, that's nice, but I'm not going to like sit there and watch it and dedicate my 3 hours at the office to seeing something that's literally a photo I could open up in a magazine. So I think that's really good advice.
That's an expression that we use a lot at YouTube, is the idea that selfies are better than Spielbergs. Like I grew up in an era when there was definitely a lot of distance between a subject and a camera, and now we see consumers much more intrigued and interested in content that feels self-shot, lo-fi, intimate, behind the scenes, and that's what we're. And to be honest with you, to speak super kind of candidly, brands that feel younger are more welcome, are open to that idea. It's more established brands that sometimes need to be really pushed to break down that barrier. But we see that, we see that working often. So
I think that's the biggest learning curve, honestly. And it's ironic because those are the people that have the most money to do these amazing videos too. So,
but it is, and I also don't want to, dismiss a brand's dedication to their own prestige. Like I know these historic brands are definitely very aware of maintaining brand integrity and brand messaging, but we see if it's Emma Chamberlain at Louis Vuitton or Ricky
literally
Thompson.
just gonna say that example too. I think that's like such a great example of what you or they have done with her and what she's doing on YouTube. It's super interesting and relevant to how these brands are adapting.
Liza Koshy at Dior. Like I'm trying to think of other incredible examples that we've seen. So that's sort of what we're invested in. I just realized that this June I will have worked here for nearly. June will be my 4-year anniversary at YouTube. And if I think about what industry perception of style content on YouTube was 4 years ago, and what the incredible team that I'm lucky to work with here has been able to do in the past nearly 4 years, it's super great to see all those inroads between traditional fashion brands and endemic creator communities. So I'd like to think it works when a brand gets it right.
I think you're right. I mean, not to segue too, but even what you guys have been doing with creators, like I remember seeing like all the stuff you do with Naomi Campbell. And could you imagine Naomi doing like this whole YouTube thing 4 years ago? No, but it was incredible. And she's definitely the type of personality that you'd love to see that kind of raw behind the scenes, even though Naomi is kind of always raw in just who she is. But yeah, I do remember that launching and being like, wow, this is amazing. So it's definitely evolved.
Naomi had, this has been well reported, but Naomi had a daughter in May of last year. But until May and through quarantine, something that I definitely would not have said 4 years ago, she was our most reliable and active creator through quarantine. She was the queen of quarantine comment. She hosted her own weekly show with Mariah Carey and Mary J. Blige and Marc Jacobs and Cindy Crawford and Anna Wintour. It was an incredible roster that she pulled. And in a lot of ways, if I think back on my, on my COVID journey, my COVID experience, I was so grateful to have a routine, and I would I would prep her before the interviews the night before, and it was great. I think it was great. Hopefully it was great for viewers to have like something to look at every Tuesday at 3 p.m. But it was also great for me to be able to work with her and do that. So anyway, I'm diverging.
I know that's what I said, but you could talk about Naomi forever. I'm obsessed.
All day,
She's
every day.
amazing. So actually, to get back on topic, let's talk about the main theme, this concept of the power of content. Creating and curating powerful content means that brands not only need to think about, what's going to represent the zeitgeist of the moment, but really make a statement about the future, about, where things are going. What, you already touched on this too, but, how can brands really pick out of an event or that campaign, what is really going to become viral? What's going to inspire masses? I mean, if everything's behind the scenes, like what's that one moment? What's your kind of thought process on how to find what works best?
I mean, that's a good question, and it's sort of like a complex answer. I wish I knew how to go viral, because I would just open up my little social firm and make $1 zillion turning all this stuff into a viral moment. What I have found sort of fascinating is that last year, in 2020, excuse me, I keep on forgetting we're in 2022. In 2021, in 2020, one of the most watched videos on the platform was how to make your own Harry Styles by J.W. Anderson cardigan. And it's the most watched video on JW's channel. And of course, in hindsight, I think people are obsessed with Harry Styles and Harry Styles' style. But I would have never thought essentially a knitting video would have become so popular in the fashion space on YouTube. But what that sort of told me is that people are still into handicraft, crafting, craftsmanship. Everyone still loves Harry Styles. Everyone's curious about how to get fashion or make fashion for less. So when we think about how to tailor content into what will perform well on YouTube, that is a good example of a lesson that we learned on how to go viral. You use what you have, invest in craftsmanship and heritage, speak directly to the viewer, offer skills and tips, or skips, if you combine them. So I guess that's it. Also, people are interested in experiences. So of course, Vogue has done an incredible job of creating content about a day in the life of a model. And we see brands now leaning more into that. I mean, to be super candid with you, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in a pre-digital era, and I would have loved to have had the sort of insights that social media now offers to the elusive and mysterious world of fashion and fashion shows and fashion shoots. So oftentimes when I think about what content will do well on YouTube, I ask myself, there's a 16 or 17-year-old kid in St. Louis, Missouri, what would he be intrigued by? And that's a good barometer too.
I think that's really interesting. Two things that you said. One, the knitting, because if you imagine I work at JW Anderson and I'm trying to think of what type of YouTube content I can produce, would I think like a 16-year-old fashion person would want to learn how to knit the sweater? But now if you walk me through the whole thing, like a Harry Styles sweater, it's really cool. I could have something that's like the brand, but I do it myself. Like, actually, it's kind of the next level of, I don't know, pairing these weird collaboration concepts, right? So.
And just a quick diversion. So last night, YouTube has launched this shorts feature. I'm sure I would like to think you've seen it. Everyone sees it. It's short form content creation. And there was a video of Harry Styles at a concert, and someone in the audience throws like a little teddy bear. I guess that's what you do at a Harry Styles concert. And the teddy bear was wearing a homemade version of the JW Anderson cardigan. And I sent it to Jonathan. I was like, this cardigan is still, in the caption on the short was, LOL at Harry's giggle when he sees that he's wearing the cardigan. So not only were people watching that video to create their own Harry Styles cardigan. They're creating for dolls. They're throwing the dolls wearing the cardigan at them at a show. So definitely that video had legs.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we had this whole conversation with Clarina, who's another speaker here, about, why Clarina has taken off is just there's this whole younger generation that's trying to figure out how they get involved with these luxury brands, even if maybe today they don't have the exact disposable income to start buying these products. So of course, being able to knit like your own sweater that's in the vein of J.W. Anderson, or a sweater for your teddy bear, it makes you feel a part of that world. So, and I guess that's the same thing we're talking about with content, right? Creating this experience that immerses you and feels like you're not just a fan, but you're a part of the community.
100%. And if I think back on my teenage years, I used to go to magazine shops and look at, you'd go there for inspiration, and look at British GQ, and then I would go to the Goodwill near my house and find old suits and take them to a tailor to, nowadays, I think kids are going to their local magazine shop to find European men's fashion magazines for style inspo. They're going on YouTube, or else they better be. And then, and that's how they're interacting and participating, even if they are not in Paris at Fashion Week, or able to go into a Vuitton shop and buy, a suit. So definitely, yeah.
I mean, content has evolved. I think like the first fashion-y video I really remember that was like how do you do it? It was like Jessica Stam, how do you walk like a model or something? And that was like when I worked at IMG, that was big time. Like we filmed this like amazing video, and you're like, yeah, that's so boring and nothing cool. I mean, actually it probably would perform well. How do you walk like a model? I'm sure there's a 16-year-old girl in Missouri that wants to be a runway model that's pulling up those videos on YouTube.
Video.
What?
How me doing Naomi's walk would do really. Maybe that's the video we need to do.
I want a cut of that, like ad revenue.
It's a shame we're live right now, Alison. I'll be like, splice that in. Let's see Naomi.
All right, so you guys can visit, youtube.com/fashion to find that video after this session.
Exactly.
And then the other thing that you said too that we just touched on, but is really interesting, is just how you guys are providing these experiences that you would read about, but you wouldn't really. I don't know if reading something in a magazine when we were 12, 14, 16 really gave that emotion that video creates. I don't know if that's something you guys talk about at YouTube too, but there's obviously, actually at Launchmetrics, we're doing a study now too, totally not connected to this session, but the emotions that video drive in consumer. And obviously that must play a huge and important role in what you guys are doing and how brands are thinking about content and how they're engaging the consumer.
Yes. And as we think about experience, I mean, I don't think fashion and tech, we're not the only industries who are suffering from, video fatigue. We're excited about Fashion Month becoming live again, offering candid insights into fashion experiences more. Last year, we did an all virtual beauty festival that we hope can have some live elements this year. But I think that's I think gaming would like to have, in-person gaming, esports, and but we're definitely looking forward to. We are optimistic that as we figure out the COVID situation, to offer more experiences or insights into existing experiences more in the future.
Well, definitely, I think the hybrid model won't ever go away. For us, like all of the data that we saw was the videos that were live streamed on YouTube, not to plug you, but people that did a digital activity and a physical activity performed the best throughout the entire pandemic, even when, Paris opened up to have audiences. It's just that, as you said, nowadays fashion shows aren't just for the people like you coming, sitting front row, but there are so many people around the world, consumers that are just tuning in and eager to see the new collection or what kind of amazing, crazy stunts and shows these brands are putting together. And they want to do it at the same time as you because they want to feel just as important as the people sitting in the front row. So
that's the word now, phygital. It's not going anywhere. I'm sure at Launchmetrics, everything's phygital over there. A lot of phygital conversations.
Definitely a lot of phygital conversations. So I know we've gone through a lot of the questions maybe just one more, actually, as we're thinking about Fashion Week. You know, and brands are going to start kicking off to prepare for their next shows, whether they're physical, digital, or phygital. How do you think they should be picking out, you know, those key moments that they should be putting on YouTube? I mean, of course, everyone's putting their whole show, but, you know, what do you think is the most important moments to be capturing at the show as they put together kind of their storyboards for filming?
I mean, I can give you a couple of tips that we've seen. We've obviously been combing through the data, and a couple of things that sort of surprised me is that full shows often do better than highlight shows. So I think when people come to YouTube, they're not looking for a 45-second cut down. They're looking for every single look, every single model. I don't think a show should be an hour and a half long, but you know, an 8-minute or an 11-minute version of a show, people really want to see the progression of a seasonal identity. And the other thing that I think a lot of brands continue to struggle with are just the 5 most important pillars of a YouTube video. That is the title, right? So oftentimes people will just pick spring summer 2021, and that's not the most enticing title to a video. Thumbnail. Sometimes people will just put a logo on the thumbnail. That's not enticing. You really want to pick a standout outfit where a model's looking at the camera. End cards. So at the end of a video, to really capture cyclical viewing from viewers, you want to make sure that at the end of this show, you show last season's show or behind the scenes or how to get the look. Embedding. I think an incredible feature about YouTube that I think a lot of brands sometimes overlook is that views are cumulative. So if a brand externalizes a YouTube link and it's uploaded on a third-party site or on Vogue.com, all those views are cumulative. More views equal higher performance, equal higher search discovery in the algorithm. And the description. I think one thing that always sort of surprises me is that when you go to fashion shows, on the seat, there are often show notes. And, you know, this year the designer was influenced by a trip to Tokyo, you know, and all that sort of information is super fascinating, especially for, I think, people at home who are starved for fashion information. Put that stuff in the description, or even better yet, put that in the live chat during the show. So people who are watching the show are constantly getting fed more and more insight, information, and background. It definitely helps contextualize and enrich the viewer's experience, knowing that those high socks or tennis skirts were inspired by Harajuku Girl, so that's I think the sort of like checklist that this year we're definitely trying to hammer into all of our partners.
I think
an example.
Oh, go ahead, go.
So when Fendace happened last September, they filmed an incredible documentary. I think it's on Versace's channel, not Fendi's channel. And the first thumbnail that they chose was a picture of Kim Jones and Donatella Versace, sort of like walking away. And then we encourage them, actually, if you think about users are scrolling through a YouTube video selection, like you want to see their face and close up.
Yeah, not their booties.
And it was a great picture, and it sort of like showed like the expanse of the Fendi headquarters and all the incredible work that collection entailed. But you really want to see Donatella's face. You want to recognize that fashion icon. So yeah, those are my biggest tips if we're thinking about how to win on content.
I think the live chat thing is a really good tip too. Like you can drive so much engagement. I know obviously during this session, there's so many people like writing us now. So I think that's one thing a lot of teams never think about doing. I don't know if you've seen an increase in that, not a question, but it's a really good thought for people to think about if they want to do a phygital event.
Dior has been good in the live chat. And as you think of in brands now, I think they're investing more in one-off shows. So if you just flood that chat with, this show is at an 18th century castle, originally built for Louis XIV. I'm totally rambling. Joan of Arc was held here during the like there's like people, I think, again, to go back to our earlier point, and I'll stop rambling. I'm sure you have a lot more incredible programming today than me rambling. But to go back to that sort of 16 or 17-year-old fashion-starved young person, I would have loved to have had some context into the fashion world. Why at the chateau? Where is the chateau? What's the history of the chateau? Who are the influences? What are the beauty inspos? So yeah, the chat is sometimes overlooked, but it's an incredible way to disseminate information to super fans of fashion.
Well, we have some super fans in the audience, so I hope you don't mind. I'm going to just grab 1 or 2 or 3 questions pending time, maybe to put you in the hot seat. I know you like being in the hot seat, so. Okay, so we talked about what works. Is there any examples you can share, maybe being a little naughty, of what didn't work in the last year or two, that you'd urge people to stay away from?
What didn't work? I guess what I just said was tricky. Bad captions, bad thumbnails, videos that are too short. I don't want to criticize 30-second or 1-minute videos. Those are incredible assets to use for paid media and advertising. But if a channel is only ads, if we think on a broader picture that in some ways YouTube is going to replace some of our television viewing habits, what do we do when a commercial comes on television? Like, you get up, you get a glass of water, you go to the bathroom. So if a YouTube channel is only 30-second commercials, you are not going to see a lot of organic interest, and definitely not a lot of people subscribing. So you definitely want to make sure, if you are a brand and you're creating commercials as ad assets, of course, lean into that and do your 30-second bits. But if you want organic attention, you really need to invest in storytelling, behind the scenes, and narrative content.
Okay, great. Yeah, I usually, I do the 4-second watch the commercials on YouTube, but then after I skip, because my daughter will say like Moana, Moana, Moana. So she's not into the ads, unfortunately. Okay, we talked a lot about, this is the next question from the audience. We talked a lot about brands today. What about creators? Any tips for creators?
I mean, it's a cliche to say it, but the biggest tip for creators is just to be super authentic and candid and relatable, I guess. When I joined YouTube, I will say this, I learned a lot of lessons when I first joined here, but one of the biggest lessons I learned was that YouTube users are incredibly savvy. They know when you are getting paid for a product. They know when you're being disingenuous, when you're endorsing a product because it's sponsored, even if you don't say it's sponsored. I mean, at the risk of sounding like a terrible person, I think, perhaps I was arrogant to think that YouTube users will watch whatever they're served, and that's not really the case. So when you think about what creators have done well on YouTube, it's typically those who have been incredibly transparent and authentic. Which makes sense, right? You don't want to feel like you're being lied to. But I find that YouTube viewing is not as passive as I thought it would be. People are really watching, and they don't want to be tricked.
Yeah, well, it's so easy to search for something new if you really don't like what you're seeing. So
a little whiff of something being inauthentic, you're on that search and discovery bar looking for something else.
For sure.
So respect the integrity of your audience, I guess is what I should say.
Respect your own integrity.
Exactly.
Okay, so one last question, and everybody wants to talk about this, so I feel like we can't not take this question before we say au revoir. But do you think next year we'll be here talking about creating content in the metaverse?
Oh, yeah, I think we will. That's a good question. It's obviously a conversation we've been having not only internally, but with other fashion partners. I think it's undeniable that the metaverse is where a lot of people are intrigued and interested. And also, there's been incredible moments where the fashion community has done stuff either in the metaverse or with gaming. I think in like 2018, so even pre-COVID, Louis Vuitton did some skins for League of Legends. You probably saw Balenciaga's Fortnite activation. Dolce & Gabbana did a bunch of NFTs that sold for over $6 million. So there's definitely already stuff happening in the fashion space in either the NFT, crypto, or meta world. If I knew what was going to happen, I would not tell you, Allison. I would go and make a bunch of money on it. But I definitely like you, and I'm sure like everyone else, we're keeping an eye on it. And again, as someone who's just observing and not necessarily participating, at the moment, I think we see a lot of gamers existing in the gaming world, and I think right now that's the fashion opportunity. We don't see a lot of we don't see an incredible amount of young female shoppers, which are traditionally the engines in the fashion space. But I definitely think that as headsets and Oculus, as all this stuff becomes much more commonplace amongst young people, it will be the job of the fashion folks to figure out how to engage with those viewers. And if they don't, someone else will. Do you know what I mean? So if you're a brand, hopefully you've got some young people that know what's going on in the meta world.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely a watch this space. Well, thank you so much on behalf of myself, Launchmetrics. It's always great chatting with you. And, I wanted to like have a drink because it's afternoon here in London, but I feel like anytime I talk to you when it's 9 a.m., you're like, yeah, I meant more like a cocktail. Like we have to do like a cocktail drink, but I have to dial in at like 11. So it's more like your happy hour time. But I hope everyone in the audience enjoyed. Thanks for those great questions, guys. We have more sessions throughout the day, so feel free to tune in, sign up, and Derek, we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. Bye, guys.